Hey guys, this will be a short video, I hope, probably around the 10-minute mark, which is short for me, trust me, or at least I'm going to try and keep it that way. So, Street Fighter V is getting a costume for Ruby Heart, which is a character that was only in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. A game I do own. I own the HD version on my 360, a first-generation 360, you know, the one that has a high fail rate. Can't wait for that to die. Ever since I would say around 2014, I was getting into Marvel vs. Capcom. I bought Marvel vs. Capcom sometime in like 2013, and I tried playing it, but I couldn't really get the hang of it, and so I kind of just didn't really play it again. I bought it for like $10, along with Street Fighter 4, because I wanted to give Street Fighter a shot, and I couldn't really get into either. At first I thought I just wasn't into 2D fighters that weren't Smash Brothers, but I think a year or two, I think it was a year later, I gave the game another chance, because I guess it was either because Zach wanted to play it, or I just wanted to give the game another shot. So, me and Zach played, and I think I might have played on my own time a bit, and for some reason, I don't know why, that's when it started to click. That's when it started to become like, wow, this, why was I not liking this before? This is awesome. It's simple, it's fun, it's flashy as fuck, it's broken as fuck. Okay, maybe I still don't like that aspect. Frickin' Zach with his frickin' constant tornado spamming, because you can do that. Granted, I hear it's easy to block, but I suck, so I'm not good at blocking, especially in 2D fighters. I'll admit, I'm much better when I have a block button, not when holding back is block. Granted, I probably should learn to do that, but again, scrub, so, you know. Regardless, despite the broken mess that it is, I really started to enjoy the game. And I want to get back into it at some point soon to try out Virgil and Dante. In fact, again, I might just record footage for this video, who knows. Though, keep in mind, most of it will be either in the training mode or against, like, easy computers, so I can get myself adjusted to Virgil's moveset and Dante's moveset. And I'm probably going to play as either Zero or somebody else. I really got into it. Eventually, I got Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, which I found for really cheap at GameStop, with the case and everything, surprisingly. I got Marvel vs. Capcom 2 HD before it was eventually taken down, and it's on my Xbox 360, and I got the PS4 version when it was released early on, digitally, because I believe the PS4 version got a re-release first, but it was just for PS4, and I think it was just for, it was either that or it was for PS4 and Xbox One, and it was released, I think, sometime at the end of 2014. And considering that was when I was getting into the franchise, that could not have come at a more perfect time, at least for me. And we got the announcement of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Infinite, right? Everybody loves that game, right? Right? I guess I got into the franchise just to see it die. You know, I get it. I do. I get why Marvel vs. Capcom is just not a franchise that can come back out of nowhere. I understand Marvel vs. Capcom is a whole shit ton of licensing, like, jargon that I probably don't even know the lengths they would have to go to get in. I don't know any of that shit. All I know is it is very, very much hard to get done. Like, Infinite was their last sort of chance to do that, and they kind of fucked it up. And Disney really, really held Capcom back from making the game that they probably wanted to make, especially when they took out the X-Men, which started the whole fucking thing. And unfortunately, that was sort of their last chance. And, you know, I get it. Maybe Disney just isn't interested in gaming anymore, you know? Like, sure, they're interested in, like, Star Wars games, which they've done a very, very polarizing job of, especially with handing the reins off to EA. Ugh. At least we got Jedi Fallen Order. That aside, while I understand why the franchise is in limbo. I don't think it would be a bad idea to test the waters with a Marvel vs. Capcom compilation and use all of the games shown here. X-Men Children of the Atom, which I believe is a beat-em-up, not a fighting game, but it was technically where a lot of the stuff originated. Marvel Superheroes, Marvel vs. Capcom, Marvel Superheroes vs. Capcom, or versus Street Fighter, X-Men versus Street Fighter, yada yada yada, doesn't matter, because one of the big problems with this franchise is unless you're using emulation, these games are incredibly expensive and hard to come by. They're for consoles that are several generations outdated. I have a Dreamcast to play Marvel vs. Capcom 1, and I'm probably going to pick up 2 sometime when I can get it for under $100, not over $100. And I know for a fact, especially if I'm getting the case, that's going to be nearly impossible. They have HD versions of, I think, 3 of the games, 3 of them. One of them, I think, being Marvel Superheroes, Marvel vs. Capcom 1, and of course we know Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is, to many people, one of the best fighting games ever made, which I would agree with. I prefer 3 personally in terms of mechanics, but 2 is still fantastic for its time, and it's aged very well, for the most part. I say for the most part, because let's be honest here, it's pretty broke. But let's be honest here, if it weren't, broken and several characters weren't overpowered, I think I'd probably be mad. It's just the Marvel vs. Capcom, really just the Marvel vs. series way, because even Tatsunoko vs. Capcom had, 0, and he was overpowered. So yeah, I guess it's always just been unbalanced as shit. Even Infinite, I think, has unbalanced shit in it, which, not very surprising. Still, considering how Marvel vs. Capcom has just sort of been laid to rest, and how so many of the games are just so hard to come by because of lack of re-releases, and how the re-releases we did get have just been taken off, I hate that so much, and I want a compilation of all of the MVC games, up to at least Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I want, you can leave 3 alone, 3 has its re-release, Infinite has its own, and we have physical versions, and so they'll last for at least a good couple of generations. And we can even play them on PS5. But the other games are we're not so lucky with those. We don't have any good way to play them except emulation. And sure, emulation is a thing. In fact, funnily enough, speaking of Capcom, a former Capcom employee, now Platinum Games, you may know him, he created Devil May Cry, he created Bayonetta, just, a few small titles, not many people are aware, it's not as if Bayo's in Smash or anything. Hideki Kamiya, and I'm going to try and pull up the tweet here, he basically said how games preservation, while it has improved a bit, is still lacking. And yeah, I think he even said in 2018 he would cancel Bayo 3, jokingly, so it's a joke, if he didn't get a virtual console. And I completely agree with him, because it's bullshit how we have to essentially pirate games just for the chance of playing them without spending $400, $500 on Chibi Robo or whatever. And Marvel vs. Capcom is one of the worst when it comes to this, because the games are just in licensing limbo. And I know it's not Capcom's fault. I know it isn't. It's Disney's fault. Because a lot of Infinite's strained development was because of Disney and their incessant need to use the MCU and nothing else, because they were so goddamn petty that Fox owned X-Men and Fantastic Four and shit, Spider-Man barely got in, probably because of that Sony deal. And that was it. Could you imagine if they didn't make that deal, Spider-Man not being in a Marvel vs. Capcom game? Could you imagine? Oh man, that would be funny as hell if it actually did happen, though. I want there to be, at the very least, a compilation. I understand a new game is not likely ever going to happen. I think it's dead at this point. Disney doesn't seem interested. They probably viewed Infinite as a failure on Capcom's fault and Capcom's That was Capcom's problem, not ours. Even though Disney, you were the one who did a lot of dickheaded things. But that aside, I would like to see the series at the very least get preserved, at least to a certain extent. And Capcom is probably trying and it's not because of the costume or anything. I guarantee you, there was probably at one point where they asked Disney, "Hey, can we do a re-release of characters, like a re-release of like the games with your characters in them?" And Disney probably told them, "Fuck no! You fucked up last time. Why should we trust you this time?" Even though they were highly successful games that, in some ways, really helped both companies. Free Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and while you're at it, free the other games. Free all of them. Every single one. Every one on this list right here. I want a compilation. I don't just want MVC2. That would be great, but I don't just want that. I want all of these games preserved. I want them all to have good ports. I want them all to have really, really nice ones. We know Capcom is capable of it. We've seen what they're capable of. Their port team, generally speaking, or the teams they hire to do ports, are generally pretty damn good. I want Marvel vs. Capcom to at least be preserved. Even if it can't be saved, even if it has to end here, I at least want them to be preserved for future generations. And also, I want to buy them so I can play them myself. So yeah, I am the Seaman235, signing out. Have a good one.